The death of legendary actor Gene Hackman has been tragic enough, and we also have the mystery of what happened to him, his wife Betsy Arakawa, and their dog, because this is a mystery that it's unfolding, and we were expecting for the coroner to have a press conference about the circumstances of the case, which so far has foul play has not been considered. But we are going to do a body language analysis of this press conference to see what is going on. What we know so far of this case is that Gene Hackman, his wife Betsy Arakawa, and one of their dogs were found dead in their Santa Fe, New Mexico home on February 26, 2025, under circumstances described as suspicious by authorities, prompting a thorough investigation. Hackman, age 95, was discovered in the mudroom, appearing to have fallen suddenly, with his pacemaker indicating his last cardiac event occurred on February 17, suggesting he may have died around February 18 from heart disease, possibly exacerbated by Alzheimer's. Arakawa, 65 years old, was found in a bathroom with signs of decomposition and mummification in her hands and feet, alongside a space heater, an open prescription bottle, and scattered pills, with evidence suggesting she died earlier, possibly around February 11. That is 1 week before Gene Hackman died. From Hantavirus, a rare rodent-transmitted disease. Their dog, a Kelpie mix named Xena, was found dead in a crate nearby, having undergone a recent veterinary procedure on February 9, though its exact cause of death remains unclear. The scene was complicated by the presence of 2 other healthy dogs, with access to a doggy door and the front door of the home being ajar with no signs of forced entry or theft. Initial autopsies showed no external trauma or carbon monoxide poisoning, and while foul play is not currently suspected, the unusual timing and conditions, such as the couple's apparent death days apart and the dog's concurrent death, have fueled speculation. Theories from forensic experts suggest that Arakawa might have fallen while rushing for medication after Hackman's collapse, possibly striking her head or succumbing to heart issues herself, though the investigation remains open pending full toxicology and autopsy results. The combination of natural causes, a rare disease, and the dog's unexplained death in a secluded, well-maintained home adds to the enigma surrounding this case. So that's why we're going to be reviewing this whole video from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. So let's begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sheriff Adan Mendoza, Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. With me today is Dr. Heather Giral, Chief Medical Investigator for the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator.
One thing that I have to make it clear, forgot to tell you at the start of this video, is that I haven't watched this press conference. I haven't watched this video. I just made sure that it had the captions and the sound was okay. The first thing that I noticed is that, well, it was the nervous smile of the coroner when she is mentioned. It's just a nervous smile, no big deal. But just so you know, I haven't watched this video, so I will be reacting on the fly, like blind run for or with you. So let's go move forward.
The New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator, Dr. Aaron Phipps, New Mexico State Public Health Veterinarian, New Mexico Department of Health, and also Chief Brian Moya, Santa Fe City Fire Department. This investigation started on February 26th with the discovery of Mr. Hackman and Miss Arakawa and their dog at their residence. I just want to do a short recap and then touch on some new information. As we know, both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide. City Fire conducted tests and deemed scene safe for deputies to conduct their investigation. The preliminary pacemaker interrogation results were released last week, and I'll let Dr. Jarrell touch more specifically on those results.
I see that the coroner has quite a lot of emotional reactions while they're talking about the initial circumstances of the case. You notice that she is the blinking rate has raised, and
The
now
preliminary
I'm gonna play this muted. You see that she is looking to one side, and all of a sudden you're gonna see this expression in her, as in she presses her lips right as he says that. Where he's seen, I'll let Dr. Gerald touch more specifically that she knows that she's about to tell the details of this case. And she also has this expression. I saw it, pretty sure. I know that I had seen this expression. Let me play this again.
For carbon monoxide. City Fire conducted tests and deemed scene safe for deputies to conduct their investigation. The preliminary pacemaker interrogation results were released last week, and I'll let Dr. Jarrell touch more specifically on those results.
Oh yeah, this is what I saw. I saw a subtle microexpression of sadness. You're gonna see it. I'm gonna play it right after she presses her lips. I knew that I had seen it. She presses her lips and pay attention to her eyebrows right here. Pay attention. This is gonna go up. There it goes. You're gonna play it so you can see it better. Pay attention. Right after she presses her lips, you're gonna see that her eyebrows are gonna go up. Presses, and right there. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. So yeah, her eyebrows just is very, very subtle, but it happens. You see that she is already I would say that is emotionally touched. I'm gonna say the words. She's emotionally touched by this case, by what we have seen so far.
Those results. The gas company New Mexico, they also did an analysis of the residence, and they found one minor leak in a single burner on the kitchen stove, which was 0.33% of room air, which was pretty minute and insignificant. Since that time, Xena, the deceased dog, has been taken for necropsy at the Veterinary Diagnostic Services, and we'll be awaiting those results. Let's speak a little bit in reference to the timeline for Betsy Arakawa. We know.
You see that the coroner looks away and down and swallows hard, as in that this is that she's not liking this even the initial description of this.
No, from our investigation, that on February 9th, 2025, she picked up Xena from Gruta Veterinary Hospital. There was a procedure that was done with the dog, which may explain why the dog was in a crate at the residence. Let's move on to February 11th, 2025. Mrs. Arakawa had an email conversation with her massage therapist at about 11:21 a.m.
One of the things that I noticed in the coroner as well, that she's taking deep breath as into control herself. Maybe she doesn't like the whole speaking to a microphone thing. She is a bit anxious about what she's about to do, but that's you can see, because you see her chest and her shoulders moving really deep when she is listening to these preliminary words.
Moving on into the afternoon, Miss Arakawa was at the Sprouts Farmers Market between 3:30 and 4:15 p.m. Miss Arakawa was seen on surveillance video at the CVS pharmacy in Santa Fe from 4:12 to 4:20 p.m. She then stopped at a local pet food store at about 4:54 p.m. Her car was seen on surveillance, and the remote control clicker that is assigned to her and her vehicle was used to enter the subdivision to gain access to the gated community at 5:15 p.m. Numerous emails were unopened on her computer on February 11th. There was no additional outgoing communication from her or known activity after February 11th, 2025. The cell phone information and the cell phone data is pending. We're working with state police to get the information from those phones.
That would be important as well.
But our investigation shows that all the last known communication and activity from Ms. Arakawa was on February 11th. I'm going to go ahead and turn over the podium to Dr. Gerald. I would ask that
Dr. Gerald presses her lips, of course, because, well, she is acknowledging that she's about to speak.
everybody refrain from asking questions until everybody has provided their statements. I'll step up to the podium and then we'll go ahead and field questions from the media. Thank you.
I'm gonna do something here so we can see this clearer. I'm gonna make this this frame a bit bigger because maybe we can cheat with the frame so we have the captions and also a better look at her, not only her body language but her facial expressions. This is gonna be much easier for you. So she's about to start.
Good afternoon and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Heather Gerald, the Chief Medical Examiner for New Mexico at the Office of the Medical Investigator. I'd like to begin by stating that it is unprecedented for the Office of the Medical Investigator to make public statements about death investigations.
You see that every couple sentences she is trying to regain her breath. Maybe she's not used to this. Well, she is saying that herself, that this is very uncommon for her to do this kind of declarations, and maybe that's why she is. Let's say that she is nervous by now.
However, the circumstances surrounding these two deaths require accurate dissemination of important information. I've also spoken with the Hackman family prior to this conference, who are aware of the autopsy findings and conclusions and are aware of this conference.
Yeah, that is important as well, because it's going to be really uncomfortable, having the details of your loved ones, having the details of an autopsy just made public.
On Thursday, February 27th, I performed an autopsy on Mr. Gene Hackman. Medical Examiner Dr. Daniel Gallego at the Office of the Medical Investigator performed a full autopsy on Miss Betsy Arakawa Hackman, also on Thursday, February 27th. By report, Miss Arakawa Hackman's legal name is Betsy Hackman, which is how she will be referred to hereafter. The cause of death for Miss Betsy Hackman, aged 65 years, is Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. The manner of death is natural. Autopsy examination and full body postmortem CT demonstrated no findings of trauma internally or externally, with microscopic findings consistent with Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome.
Yeah, I see that she's, God, this is very technical. This is a very technical part of her job that should be no problem. But still, I see that she's really, really rattled, really affected by this.
Laboratory testing was positive for Hantavirus at a clinical lab, with required confirmation testing positive at Scientific Laboratories Division. Testing for COVID-19, influenza, and other common respiratory viruses was negative. Testing for carbon monoxide was negative. There were no other significant natural disease findings. Pills present on scene were thyroid medication, which were being taken as prescribed and is not currently a concern for a contributory cause of death. The cause of death for Mr. Gene Hackman, aged 95 years, is hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributory factor. Autopsy examination and a full-body postmortem CT examination demonstrated no acute findings of internal or external trauma and showed severe heart disease, including multiple surgical procedures involving the heart, evidence of prior heart attacks, and severe changes of the kidneys due to chronic high blood pressure.
And so far, I haven't seen any changes in her recollections, her body language with the describing Betsy Arakawa's death and describing Gene Hackman's death. There's no difference in the body language so far. It's just the same labored breathing. The eye movement is pretty much the same. The voice tone is the same. So far she is affected by, let's say that, by both deaths in the same way.
Examination of the brain showed advanced Alzheimer's disease, as well as blood vessel changes in the brain secondary to chronic high blood pressure. Laboratory testing performed at Scientific Laboratories Division was negative for COVID-19, influenza, and other common respiratory viruses. Testing for Hantavirus was negative. Testing for carbon monoxide was negative.
I just noticed that when she said that carbon monoxide, she kept her eyes closed. It was like a long blink.
Testing for Hantavirus was negative.
Here it comes.
Testing for carbon monoxide was negative.
It was a long blink in there. It's something that it's something that she has done in all the press conference.
Testing for carbon monoxide was negative.
It was a long blink. Usually do long blinks when you don't want to be in some place you are uncomfortable, you're upset. But she hadn't done those long blinks before. Just wanted to make that observation.
Additionally, there were no autopsy findings concerning for hantavirus infection. I have been asked when death occurred for these individuals. There is no reliable scientific method to accurately determine the exact time or date of death. Mr. Hackman's initial pacemaker data revealed cardiac activity on February 17th.
Okay, her rate of speech is going a bit faster. So I can assume that she is she's becoming a bit more upset, more uncomfortable as she is getting into more details.
With subsequent pacemaker interrogation demonstrating an abnormal rhythm of atrial fibrillation on February 18th, which was the last record of heart activity. Based on this information, it is reasonable to conclude that Mr. Hackman probably died around February 18th. Based on the circumstances, it is reasonable to conclude that Ms. Hackman passed away first, with February 11th being the last time that she was known to be alive. Lastly, clinically, hantavirus infection is characterized by flu-like symptoms consisting of fever, muscle aches, cough, sometimes vomiting and diarrhea that can progress to shortness of breath and cardiac or heart failure and lung failure.
But when she changes to just explain what are the possible symptoms or the symptoms of hantavirus, her body language returns to baseline. She even straight, you can say that she is a bit more confident. She's not as rattled. You see that it's like switching to her scientific side or technical side. It's talking about the disease itself.
Lastly, clinically, hantavirus infection is characterized by flu-like symptoms consisting of fever, muscle aches, cough, sometimes vomiting and diarrhea that can progress to shortness of...
You see, she says progress, and she even raises her head. It's like it's like, well, this is the easy part for her, right? It's only speaking about a disease. I say this because this is important, as you can compare when somebody's talking about what is their field of expertise and what is when they're talking in this case about Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's deaths, and you see that, well, you can compare body language in both instances.
Breath and cardiac or heart failure and lung failure. This occurs after a 1 to 8 week exposure to excrement from a primarily...
I see a raise on both shoulders in there.
This occurs after a 1 to 8...
1 to 8, and she raises her shoulders. I'm gonna just gonna put that as an emotional reaction. I'm not gonna give it any meaning yet.
This occurs after a 1 to 8 week exposure to excrement from a primarily particular mouse species that carries hantavirus. The mortality of hantavirus, the mortality rate of the hantavirus strain in the Southwest is about 38 to 50%. The hantavirus strains in the United States are not transmissible from person to person. And so this is an appropriate time to segue to Dr. Aaron Phipps, the state public health veterinarian with the New Mexico Department of Health. But before I do so, I'd like to kindly ask for everyone to please respect the privacy that Mr. Gene Hackman, Miss Betsy Hackman, and their family and friends deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerald. I will now provide additional information about hantaviruses in New Mexico. There are many different types of hantaviruses found worldwide. These viruses are zoonotic, meaning they are transmitted from animals to humans. Hantaviruses are carried by rodents. The hantavirus found in New Mexico, the sin nombre virus, is found throughout the state, primarily in deer mice, but in other rodents as well. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome is a rare disease caused by hantaviruses, but a small number of human infections are found every year in New Mexico. Over the past 5 years, New Mexico has confirmed between 1 and 7 hantavirus infections in humans each year.
Okay, this is between 1 and 7 zoonotic, it seems that human infections. 1 and 7 each year. Okay, it is rare. This is I don't know. I'm not a specialist, but it sounds like very few.
Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome is a rare disease caused by hantaviruses, but a small number of human infections are found every year in New Mexico. Over the past 5 years, New Mexico has confirmed between 1 and 7 hantavirus infections in humans each year. Through the end of 2024, we have identified 136 infections over the past 50 years in New Mexico residents, 5 of these in Santa Fe County. This is a serious disease. 42% of these infections here in New Mexico were fatal. Most transmission occurs around the patient's residence or workplace, and the New Mexico Department of Health typically conducts an environmental investigation at the residence of all hantavirus cases in our jurisdiction. This can help identify specific areas that may pose higher risk, providing insight into where transmission may have occurred and how to prevent future infections. On March 5th, the New Mexico Department of Health staff conducted a risk assessment of the property, including the main residence as well as other structures on the property. This was critically important to address concerns about health risks to first responders, as well as to inform any prevention measures needed to protect the family and other individuals entering the property in the future. We assessed the risk of exposure in the primary residence as low, similar to other well-maintained houses in New Mexico. We did identify signs of rodent entry in other structures on the property and provided information and resources about reducing the risk of hantavirus transmission related to those areas. Hantavirus can be transmitted to people through rodent urine, droppings, or saliva, so it is important to take special steps when cleaning up after rodents. Avoiding contact with or breathing in aerosolized rodent urine or feces, especially in a poorly ventilated area, is key.
So it's even airborne, oh, right? So it's even but even so, it's so few cases, so few cases. Something, well, it's I really didn't know this.
Detailed guidance can be found on the New Mexico Department of Health and the CDC websites, but I will provide a very brief summary now. It is important to use gloves and a well-fitting N95 mask when around or cleaning rodent-infested areas, and to open any windows or doors for at least 30 minutes beforehand to increase ventilation. Spray the area thoroughly with a 10% bleach solution or a commercial disinfectant. Let it sit for 5 minutes. Next, clean the area with paper towels, then throw them away in a covered garbage can that is regularly emptied. Before removing gloves, wash your gloved hands with soap and water or with a disinfectant, and then after removing gloves, wash your hands again with soap and water. It's important to never sweep up or vacuum mouse droppings, since this can spread particles up into the air. Since hantavirus is found throughout New Mexico, awareness of these risks and how to reduce them is important for all New Mexicans. The New Mexico Department of Health extends our deepest condolences to the families and friends during this difficult time. Thank you.
So it's important to notice that, yeah, even you can imagine how many rodents are in New Mexico. Even so, it's the amount of people who get this virus is incredibly low.
Thank you. I think that'll conclude the statements for today. We will go ahead and take questions. I ask that there be one question per agency, and please state who you're directing the question to, as there's several individuals here at this conference. Sir.
Sheriff, just to clarify the timeline here, does this mean Gene Hackman was likely home with his deceased wife for a week before he passed away himself?
They're asking if the deaths happen 1 week apart.
Yes, I would assume that is the case.
Do you believe, given his Alzheimer's status, that Mr. Hackman was able to live on his own and survive for those 7 days?
So it means that he was living on his own and surviving for those 7 days?
I think that's more a question, maybe for Dr. Jarrell.
Just to repeat so that everyone could hear, the question was, do we believe that Mr. Hackman was able to live on his own and survive? The answer to that question is that Mr. Hackman showed evidence of advanced Alzheimer's disease. I'm not aware of what his normal daily functioning capability was.
Yeah, that is the most important thing. Is if he had an Alzheimer's, how could he just barely function look at her after himself for 7 days? I don't know. It's something that is I think that the coroner herself cannot really answer that question.
He was in a very poor state of health. He had significant heart disease, and I think ultimately that is what resulted in his death. I was able to look at fluid to determine if he was dehydrated, and I did not see evidence of dehydration.
What I see in her body language right now is that she is much more tense right now, answering to these questions than when she was describing what was in her report.
I did see evidence of very poor kidney function, and I think he died as a result of his heart disease and with Alzheimer's being that contributing factor.
What about starvation?
The question was, what about starvation? So there was no food in his stomach, which means he had not eaten recently, but he had also no evidence of dehydration.
So based on your understanding.
Well, one thing that many people are asking is how come that both Dean Hackman and his wife were just not accounted for days, for so many days. Where were their sons? I don't know how many sons do they have, but how could nobody check on them? Like it was so strange. And why was the door ajar? It's something that doesn't make any sense.
Of the progression of the Alzheimer's, do you believe that he was possibly not aware that his wife had died or didn't know what to do in that situation?
It's difficult to answer. The question was he aware that Miss Hackman had died? And I think that question's difficult to answer, but I can tell you that he was in an advanced state of Alzheimer's, and it's quite possible that he was not aware that she was deceased.
This is for the sheriff. Considering the circumstances under which Mr. Hackman was found in the mudroom with his walking cane and sunglasses by him, do you think there is a possibility that he was trying to get help for his wife?
That's hard to answer.
As he was by the mudroom with his cane and his sunglasses, if Gene Hackman was trying to look for any sort of help for his wife.
Again, it's hard to get into the frame of mind of what was happening at the time. And I don't know if we'll ever have the answer to that question, whether he was going to go for help or he wasn't. Sir?
Sheriff, are there any other big questions that you're trying to answer? I mean, does this answer the biggest questions you had about their death in this case? Is there anything else that you're really seeking?
Yeah, so the question is there any other big questions that are left? I think a lot of questions were answered here today. I think there was, Dr. Durrell went over the cause of death, and I think a lot of those questions are answered. I think the timeline that we've been given as far as the pacemaker results and the history and evidence that we found as far as the timeline of Miss Arakawa, I think a lot of the questions have been answered. We are waiting on the cell phones, but I would very unlikely that the cell phones are going to show anything else. Another question?
Sheriff, are there any signs of, what have you learned about Mr. Hackman's communication after February 11th? Did you talk to any friends of his who had spoken with him during that week-long period? Or know anything?
Was there any communication from Gene Hackman with his friends after February 11th when they have the idea that that's when Betsy died?
So the question is whether there was any communication from Mr. Hackman or activity, and no, at this point, no. I don't know if he used cell phones or technology or emails. There's no indication of that. So right now there is no activity from Mr. Hackman.
Sheriff, do you know if his pacemaker...
The thing that I would ask is if they had all these days, well, they have the all the autopsy results and all the toxicology results, how come they don't have the information of the cell phones yet? It should be quite easy. I don't know.
was connected to some sort of monitoring service. If anyone tipped off that something...
If his pacemaker was connected to some kind of monitoring service.
The question was his pacemaker connected to a monitoring service? The answer to that is that his physician, one of his physicians, had contacted me and told me that they could see the data from the 17th, but that to really get the most information from that would come from the interrogation of the pacemaker. And that's as much as I can answer, not being a cardiologist.
But they didn't say whether or not they were monitoring, or was his pacemaker equipped to send back data in exact time so that someone could say, hey, something's not right?
I can't answer that question, I'm sorry.
So talking about the back data of the pacemaker, if that can say anything else about the circumstances, I think that would be a big part of it, right? If the pacemaker has any sort of log of activity, if there's any sort of signals that it could say, I guess that should be important, right?
Sir.
Was there any footage that came from the body cam from the house?
I'm sorry, what was...
Was there any footage or anything that you can see from, like, body cam footage from the house?
Are you talking about the body cams that the investigator, the responding personnel were wearing?
The
No, there was no outside surveillance or interior surveillance that we are aware of in the residence. So there was nothing to show the activity inside or outside the residence, and not at this time, no.
This is another thing. You have, you have Gene Hackman, who has advanced Alzheimer's, not only by the recollections of the family, but the coroner herself. She says that, well, there was the signs in his brain, and you have absolutely no cameras inside the house to check on them, to check externally on them. I mean, if you have a family, if you have I don't know, your family should be able to check on you just by cameras. It's just for safety reasons. What do I know?
Sherelle, you mentioned that one of the symptoms of hantavirus is shortness of breath. We learned before that Betsy Hackman was laying on the floor when she was found. What kind of medical episode would she have had to cause her to fall and then not be able to ask for help?
The question was regarding shortness of breath with hantavirus and what kind of medical episode would we expect from somebody found on the floor. And I think to be able to answer that question fairly, it can go back to hantavirus infection, which initiates with what's called a prodromal phase. That's initially flu-like symptoms where a person has fever and muscle aches, that they don't feel well. After, of course, being exposed to rodent excrement. And that phase can last roughly 3 to 6 days. And then they can transition to that pulmonary phase.
I see that her breath is more labored in this answer, as in this hasn't been happening in the other in the other moments that she has been speaking. Her breath is way more labored. And by the way, if this takes up to 3 to 6 days, why didn't Betsy Arakawa seek I don't know, medical treatment? Like, if you are in the shortness of breath and fever, you should be doing something, right?
Where they have fluid in their lungs and around their lungs. And at that point, a person can die very quickly, within 24 to 48 hours, roughly speaking, without medical treatment. It's not uncommon to find someone down on the floor as part of a terminal collapse, so to speak, and that may very well have been what happened to Ms. Hackman.
You're estimating her time of death on the 11th, or is it possible that she collapsed and was alive for a couple of days?
It's hard to say. I don't think she was on the floor alive for a couple of days. I think that she went through that time period, and I don't know when she began to feel ill. And those are just things that I don't know that I'm ever going to have the answers to. But I think, and going back to that initial time period, roughly 3 to 6 days of feeling ill and then succumbing pretty quickly after fluid begins to build up in the lungs.
Given the dog was created, is it fair to assume that the dog died from dehydration or starvation?
So is it in turn of the veterinarian?
I don't think we know the answer to that. However, given the timelines presented, it is a possibility.
Is it possible the dog had the hantavirus?
Dogs do not get sick from hantavirus.
Sure.
Interesting that there is a zoonotic disease that goes from rodents to people, but not to dogs.
The question was if we knew on Betsy's visit to the pharmacy if there was some medication or if she consulted with a pharmacist. We don't have that information, and I'm not sure that we can get that information due to HIPAA laws, but we don't have that information right now.
Sure.
Sure. At this point, there's no indication that there was a caretaker at the home.
Sheriff, with the footage that you saw of Betsy on February 11th, was there any indication that she was feeling shortness of breath or having trouble moving around while she was running these errands?
You know, we can analyze the video a little more, but it's going to be hard to tell. She was walking around, she was shopping, she was visiting stores, but my detectives didn't indicate that there was any problem with her.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you have these symptoms that your breathing is going to become harder, and what they saw in the last days or the last day that they have confirmed that Betsy Arakawa was alive, she was moving in all these stores and doing all this, running these errands in a normal way, then that it's way more strange, right? It's like that doesn't fit.
Struggle of her getting around. So, and I believe she had a mask on also. So I'll have to confirm that. But yeah, that there wasn't any indication of that. Sasha?
I don't know if we could better answer it, but when was the last time you guys dealt with a hantavirus case in San Jose County or responded to one?
Yeah, the question was last time the city of Santa Fe or the county dealt with a hantavirus case. I think we're gonna have to look into that. I'll get back to you. I would have to do some data before we pull that.
Yeah, when was the last time that they had to deal with a hantavirus case? Well, I guess that with so few hantavirus cases, like in 50 years, they have like less than 150. Then you can imagine that. Well, it's they should have to check on that. So you can imagine that they have very strict. It's so hard to, especially if you are in a well-maintained house, which is the thing that if you get, for example, if you get hantavirus and you are in this, the thing would be to try to analyze the people who have gotten hantavirus in New Mexico, what have been the circumstances? Because, well, maybe those circumstances were extreme, right? Which would make the fact that Betsy Arakawa got hantavirus even stranger. So that question was interesting. Was a good question.
Is there a concern about a bigger public health issue here when it comes to hantavirus?
The CDC is aware of this case. Hantavirus is a notifiable condition nationally. All hantavirus cases are notified to them. This is not an unusual case. We get cases every year, unfortunately. So we're not seeing any indications of any abnormal or unusual patterns.
Even so, 46% of fatality is very high.
We'll go ahead and take two more questions, and then we'll wrap this up. Is there anybody that hasn't asked a question yet? Sir.
Do we know, did Betsy communicate to anyone, family, friends, that she was feeling ill?
Again, we're going through some of the communications, and I think the cell phones may have some indications of that prior to the 11th. But as of this moment, I don't have any information that she was indicating that she was feeling ill during any communication. One more question?
Since there's no sense that this is criminal in nature, are you closing this investigation? Are you still going to be releasing body camera footage from the deputies that entered the house? What happens next?
So we will deal with IPRA requests as necessary. If there's body camera or any request for public information, we will be releasing that because of the law. But yeah. We consider this an open investigation until we close the loopholes of the cell phones, until we finish out the necropsy results of the canine, and other loose ends that we need to tie up. But I think we're pretty close to the timeline and with the information that Dr. Jarrell provided.
I was looking for if Gene Hackman has 3 children from his first marriage to Faye Maltese. He has 2 daughters, Elizabeth Hackman and Leslie Ann Hackman, and 1 son, Christopher Allen Hackman. Yeah, but let me see. This is how old are they all? Let's continue.
One question on the heart disease. Is it fair to describe this as a heart attack, or is that not an accurate term for the heart disease that he suffered?
So the age of Christopher Hackman is 65 years old. Elizabeth Jan Hackman is 62 years old, and Leslie Ann Hackman is 58 years old. How none of them contacted their father in all that time. Well, it's still part of the mystery.
The question was, is it fair to conclude that Mr. Hackman died from a heart attack? And the answer to that is that it's a little bit difficult to say. I saw no microscopic evidence of a recent heart attack. However, those changes can also take some time to develop, several hours to develop, so that I can see it under the microscope. He could have had an abnormal heart rhythm. We already know that he was in atrial fibrillation on the 18th, and that could have evolved into a more terminal heart rhythm.
Is heart failure an okay way to describe it? If we use that terminology?
The question was, did Mr. Hackman have heart failure? Oftentimes we see fluid around the lungs and heart failure and congestion of the liver. I did not see that in his case, but he had very poor heart, or very extensive heart disease. And so he would have been predisposed to abnormal heart rhythms, and hence he had a pacemaker as well.
Thank you, everybody. That'll conclude the press conference for today. Thank you, everybody.
So, well, having watched the press conference, what we know so far, we have the details. Still, so many questions unanswered. I guess that maybe the cell phones will have some more answers. Maybe they won't. The body cam footage could be useful. I don't know if they're gonna release that. I don't. Do they release that kind of stuff? I don't know, but so far what I see in this just very loose body language analysis is that well, at least the coroner was quite affected by the circumstances of the case. It seems that it is not something that she's used to, or at least the circumstances of the case. I mean, a coroner is used to doing autopsies and maybe strange circumstances, but maybe she saw something that was really out of the ordinary. And between the Hantavirus, that you know that is extremely rare, to the time between Betsy Arakawa died and the time that Gene Hackman died is 1 week, and she didn't show any signs of labored breathing or difficulty moving. There's still so many questions that I have the idea that this is not going to be the last time we're going to be checking on this case. But again, I would like to know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Body Language Guy. Much love and bliss.